The street felt different the moment I stepped onto it. Not quieter, just aware. Like the air itself had been waiting, holding its breath until I arrived. The lamps overhead flickered once, a slow, deliberate pulse that didn't feel like a malfunction so much as a greeting. The shadows beneath them stretched outward, longer than they should have been, reaching across the pavement as if trying to close the distance on their own. A cold pressure brushed the edge of my thoughts, not a push this time, but a presence leaning in, testing the boundary between us as though it remembered how close it had gotten before and wanted to start from there. The air tightened around my shoulders, a thin, invisible weight that made it feel like something was standing just behind me, close enough to disturb the space around my skin without ever making a sound. The city wasn't just watching tonight. It was waiting, and whatever had tried to cross over before felt closer now. More focused, more certain of the space it wanted to take. The air didn't just feel aware anymore. It felt alert, like something in the dark had straightened its posture the moment I stepped forward. A faint vibration moved through the pavement beneath my feet, subtle enough to question, strong enough to feel intentional. The lamps overhead flickered again, but this time the light didn't return evenly. One lamp stayed dim, its glow trembling as if something was standing directly beneath it, blocking the light in a shape I couldn't see. The pressure in my mind deepened, no longer brushing the edges but settling behind my thoughts like a cold hand resting there, waiting. Every breath I took felt slightly delayed, as if the air had to pass through something unseen before reaching my lungs. A shadow stretched across the street ahead of me. Not long, not distorted, just wrong. It moved a fraction of a second after I did, like it was trying to match my steps but hadn't learned the timing yet. The cold around my shoulders tightened, pulling inward, guiding me forward without touching me. The city felt like it was leaning closer, narrowing itself around my path, funneling me towards something it didn't want me to avoid. Whatever had been waiting in the dark wasn't keeping its distance anymore. It was learning me, studying me, and with every step, it felt more certain of how close it wanted to get. The shadow ahead of me didn't stay still. It twitched, a small, sharp movement, like it was trying to correct itself after copying me wrong. The pavement around it darkened for a moment, as if something beneath the surface had shifted closer to the top. The air pressed tighter around my ribs, not enough to stop my breath, just enough to make each inhale feel monitored. Every time my chest rose, the cold around me pulsed in response, matching the rhythm a fraction too late, like it was learning the timing of my breathing. A faint sound drifted through the street. Not footsteps, not movement, just a soft distortion in the air, like the city exhaled in a voice it didn't have. The lamps flickered again, but this time the light didn't return evenly. One lamp stayed dark for a full second longer, and in that second, the space beneath it seemed to bend inward, as if something was standing there, absorbing the glow. The pressure in my mind shifted. Not deeper, closer. It felt like something was leaning in behind my thoughts, tilting its attention toward whatever I was about to notice next. The cold around my shoulders tightened, guiding my gaze toward the far end of the street. Another shadow stretched across the pavement. Not mine, not human. It moved a moment before I did, as if anticipating my next step instead of reacting to it. The city wasn't just aware anymore. It was participating, and whatever had been trying to cross over felt like it was testing how close it could get without revealing itself. The shadow that moved before I didn't fade this time. It lingered on the pavement, stretched thin and trembling, as if something inside it was trying to hold its shape. The air around it warped slightly, bending the edges of the streetlights like heat rising off asphalt, except the night was cold enough to sting. A low hum drifted through the street, too soft to be mechanical, too steady to be natural. It vibrated through the ground, through my shoes, through my bones, settling behind my ribs like it was trying to anchor itself inside me. Every time my heart beat, the hum shifted, adjusting to match the rhythm a little more closely. The pressure in my mind tightened again, no longer a presence behind my thoughts but something leaning forward, listening. The cold around my shoulders crept down my spine, slow and deliberate, as if tracing the shape of me from the outside. Ahead of me, the dim lamp flickered once, then again, then it stayed dark, but the space beneath it didn't disappear. It deepened. The darkness there wasn't empty. It had weight, it had intent, and it felt like it was leaning toward me, stretching the shadows across the pavement in thin, trembling lines that reached farther than they should have. The air thickened around my legs, slowing my steps, not stopping me but guiding me, nudging me toward the center of the street where the shadows converged. The city felt like it was narrowing itself again, closing the distance, tightening the path until there was nowhere to look that didn't feel watched. Something in the dark shifted. Not a sound, not a movement, just a change in the air pressure, subtle but unmistakable, like the moment before someone steps into a room. Whatever had been trying to cross over wasn't testing the boundary anymore. It was pressing against it. The darkness beneath the dead lamp didn't stay still. It thickened, pulling inward like a slow inhale, drawing the shadows tighter around it. The edges of the street seemed to bend toward that point, as if the city itself was leaning in to listen. The hum beneath my feet deepened, vibrating through the pavement in a slow, deliberate rhythm that didn't match anything mechanical. It pulsed once, then again, then it synced with the beat of my heart, adjusting itself until the two rhythms were almost indistinguishable. The pressure in my mind shifted sharply, no longer hovering behind my thoughts but sliding closer, settling just beneath the surface like something was trying to share the space inside my head. Every time I blinked, the darkness ahead of me seemed a fraction closer, as if it moved only when I couldn't see it. A thin line of cold traced the length of my spine, slow and precise, like a fingertip dragging downward without ever touching skin. The air around my legs tightened again, not enough to stop me, but enough to guide me forward, nudging me toward the center of the street where the shadows converged. The trembling shadow on the pavement twitched violently, then stretched toward me in a sudden, jerking motion that didn't match the rest of the street's stillness. It stopped just short of my foot, quivering like it was waiting for something, or someone, to give it permission to move closer. The lamps flickered in a staggered pattern, one after another, as if something was passing beneath them, disrupting the light in a shape I couldn't see. Each flicker felt like a breath against my skin, cold and deliberate, brushing the air around me in slow, measured pulses. The boundary between me and whatever was pressing against the dark felt thinner now. Not broken, not crossed, just stretched, tight enough that I could feel the strain of something pushing from the other side. And for the first time, it didn't feel like it was testing the boundary. It felt like it was preparing to step through it. The darkness beneath the dead lamp didn't just deepen this time. It expanded. A slow, deliberate swell pushed outward from the center of the shadow, bending the edges of the pavement as if the ground itself was reacting to something pressing up from underneath. The hum in the street shifted pitch, no longer syncing with my heartbeat but anticipating it, rising a fraction of a second before each pulse, like it was trying to lead instead of follow. The pressure in my mind tightened sharply, sliding forward until it felt like something was standing just behind my thoughts, leaning over my shoulder from the inside. Every blink made the darkness ahead of me jump closer, not by distance but by presence, like it was stepping toward me in a way the eye couldn't track. A cold line wrapped around my ankles, not touching, just circling, as if the air itself was learning the shape of my legs. The street felt narrower, the buildings leaning inward, their windows dark and reflective, mirroring a version of the street that didn't match the one I was standing in. The trembling shadow on the pavement twitched again, but this time it didn't stop. It dragged itself forward in a slow, scraping motion, stretching thin across the ground like it was trying to reach my foot. The air around it rippled, bending the light in a way that made the edges of the street blur. The lamps flickered in a staggered wave, one after another, as if something was moving beneath them, passing through the light in a shape the bulbs couldn't hold. Each flicker sent a cold pulse through the air, brushing against my skin in slow, deliberate strokes. The pressure in my mind shifted again, not deeper, not closer, but wider. Like something was spreading out behind my thoughts, making room for itself. The boundary between here and whatever was pressing against it felt stretched to its limit. And for the first time, it felt like the next movement wouldn't be a test. It would be an arrival. The darkness beneath the dead lamp didn't expand this time. It recoiled, not away from me, but inward, as if something inside it had pulled back to gather itself. The pavement around it trembled in a way that didn't match the hum beneath my feet, like two different rhythms were fighting for control of the street. The air tightened around my chest, not enough to stop my breath, but enough to make each inhale feel like it had to pass through a layer of cold that hadn't been there a moment ago. The pressure in my mind widened again, stretching across my thoughts like a thin film, making it hard to tell which sensations were mine and which were being placed there. The trembling shadow on the pavement jerked violently, then snapped into a new shape, not human, not familiar, just a stretched, angular outline that didn't match anything in the street. It held that shape for a moment, then twitched again, as if something was trying to decide what form it wanted to take. The lamps flickered in a rapid, uneven pattern, each bulb stuttering at a different speed, creating a strobe of fractured light that made the street feel like it was shifting between two versions of itself. In one flicker, the pavement looked normal. In the next, it looked deeper, like the ground had thinned. A cold pulse rolled through the air, brushing against my arms in a slow, deliberate sweep, as if something was circling me without making a sound. The buildings on either side of the street leaned inward again, their windows reflecting a version of the street where the shadows moved even when I didn't. The hum beneath my feet rose sharply, then cut out completely. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt crowded. The darkness beneath the dead lamp swelled once more, not outward, not upward, but forward. And for the first time, it felt like whatever was pressing against the boundary wasn't just preparing to step through it. It was choosing where to emerge. The darkness beneath the dead lamp didn't wait this time. It pushed forward in a slow, deliberate swell, stretching across the pavement like a tide rolling in without sound. The edges of the shadow sharpened, then blurred, then sharpened again, as if something inside it was struggling to hold a shape it hadn't worn in a long time. The air around me thickened, not just cold now but heavy, pressing against my skin in uneven pulses that felt like breaths that weren't mine. Each pulse crept higher, brushing my arms, my shoulders, the back of my neck, mapping the outline of me with a patience that felt practiced. The pressure in my mind shifted again, sliding sideways this time, as if something was trying to look through my thoughts instead of simply leaning against them. A faint ringing threaded through the silence, thin and metallic, vibrating behind my eyes in a way that made the street tilt for a moment. The trembling shadow on the pavement jerked once, then split, a thin line branching off from its center, dragging itself toward me in a slow, scraping motion that didn't match the rhythm of anything living. The pavement beneath it darkened, as if the shadow was sinking into the ground and pulling the street down with it. The lamps flickered in a chaotic pattern, no longer in sequence but in frantic bursts that made the street stutter between light and dark. In one flicker, the buildings looked normal. In the next, their windows were black voids, reflecting nothing at all. A cold sweep of air circled my legs, tightening just above my knees, as if something was testing how easily it could guide me, or stop me. The hum beneath the pavement returned in a low, uneven throb, rising and falling like a heartbeat that didn't belong to anything human. The darkness beneath the dead lamp surged again, pushing forward in a sudden, silent lurch that made the air buckle. The boundary between here and whatever was pressing against it didn't just feel thin now. It felt strained, stretched, ready to tear, and for the first time, it felt like the thing in the dark wasn't deciding whether to cross over. It was deciding how. The darkness beneath the dead lamp didn't surge this time. It lurched, as if something inside it had finally found the leverage it needed. The pavement buckled in a shallow ripple, a slow rise and fall that moved beneath my feet like the ground was breathing. The hum in the street fractured into thin, uneven strands of sound, each one vibrating at a slightly different pitch, weaving together into something that felt almost intentional. The pressure in my mind tightened until it felt like a second pulse had formed behind my thoughts, beating out of sync with my own. Every blink made the street jump, not forward, not backward, but sideways, like reality was shifting a fraction of an inch each time my eyes closed. The shadow that had split earlier dragged itself farther across the pavement, its thin branch stretching toward me with a slow, dragging motion that left faint distortions in the air. The ground beneath it darkened again, deeper this time, as if the shadow wasn't lying on the street anymore but sinking into it. A cold sweep of air wrapped around my waist, tightening just enough to make me aware of the space it occupied. It didn't pull, it didn't push, it just held its place, as if marking where it wanted me to stay. The lamps flickered in a violent burst, all at once, plunging the street into a single heartbeat of darkness. When the light returned, the buildings on either side seemed closer, their windows reflecting a version of the street where the shadows were already touching my feet. The darkness beneath the dead lamp swelled again, but this time it didn't stop at the pavement. It rose, not fully, not clearly, just enough to distort the air above it, bending the light in a way that made the space shimmer like heat over asphalt, except the night was colder than before. The boundary didn't feel strained anymore. It felt compromised, and whatever was pressing through it wasn't testing, or preparing, or choosing. It was entering. The darkness that had risen beneath the dead lamp didn't settle back down. It held its place in the air, suspended just above the pavement like a shape that hadn't fully decided whether it belonged to this world or the one pressing against it. The space around it walked in slow, uneven waves, bending the light in a way that made the edges of the street ripple. Each distortion felt like a breath, not mine, not the city's, but something else exhaling through a boundary that wasn't meant to open. The pressure in my mind tightened until it felt like a second presence was standing inside my thoughts, not pushing, not speaking, just observing from a place too close to separate from myself. Every blink made the distortion jump, not forward but outward, expanding in thin, trembling lines that reached across the street like cracks spreading through glass. The shadow that had split earlier dragged itself farther, its thin branch stretching toward my foot with a slow, deliberate pull that left faint impressions in the pavement. The ground beneath it darkened again, deeper than before, as if the shadow wasn't lying on the street anymore but sinking into something beneath it. A cold sweep of air wrapped around my arms, tightening just enough to make the space feel claimed. The lamps flickered in a violent burst, plunging the street into a single heartbeat of darkness. When the light returned, the distortion above the pavement had grown, not taller, not wider, just more defined, like it was learning the shape it wanted to hold. The hum beneath the street returned in a fractured rhythm, rising and falling in uneven pulses that made the ground feel unsteady. Each pulse pushed the distortion a fraction closer, bending the air around it in slow, deliberate waves. The boundary didn't feel compromised anymore. It felt breached, and whatever was pressing through it wasn't emerging slowly. It was forming. The distortion above the pavement didn't stay still. It pulsed, a slow, deliberate contraction that made the air fold inward around it, as if the space itself was bracing for something to push through. The lamps flickered in uneven bursts, each one dimming a little longer than the last, like the light was being pulled toward the distortion instead of shining on it. The pressure in my mind spread wider, settling behind my thoughts like a cold layer of fog. Every sound in the street felt muted, swallowed before it reached my ears, leaving only the faint vibration beneath my feet, a low, irregular throb that rose and fell in a rhythm that didn't belong to anything living. The shadow on the pavement twitched again, then stretched toward me in a slow, dragging motion, its edges trembling as if something inside it was struggling to hold its shape. The ground beneath it darkened, sinking a fraction deeper with each movement, like the street was thinning under its weight. A cold sweep of air wrapped around my back, tightening just enough to make me aware of the space it occupied. The buildings leaned inward again, their windows reflecting a version of the street where the distortion was already touching my feet. The boundary wasn't just breached now. It felt like something on the other side was searching for the exact place it wanted to emerge.